and stretch is usually the first animation principle you learn, and pretty quickly you check it off your list as done. I did too, but as I kept animating, I started noticing that my animations felt flat, generic, like something important was missing. If you've learned squash and stretch, but it's not giving your animations the impact you think it should, then this video is for you. Because squash and stretch isn't really about the definition. It's about how you're allowed to break reality, and most of us miss it when we plan it. In this video, I'll show you what squash and stretch actually means, why it often doesn't work when you're using it, and the quiet mistake that breaks it every single time. So when you learn squash and stretch, you were likely told it's the animation principle of exaggerating an object's compression, the squash, and elongation, the stretch, during motion to convey weight, flexibility, and speed, making it feel more alive and less stiff. And that part of the definition is where most beginners stop. In fact, if you're a beginner learning squash and stretch for the first time, all you're probably getting from that is, I need to squash and stretch things as I move, and that will make it feel alive. That's a good thought as a beginner, but you're missing a few key pieces that will really show you the power that this animation principle gives you in your animation. You learn what squash and stretch actually mean when you become an intermediate. And the way that you get to that intermediate level is that you have to understand that squash and stretch isn't about squashing and stretching. It's about taking our reality, understanding what makes it real, and then breaking our reality to add it into your animation to make it feel like it was always real to begin with. Let me give you some examples so this actually makes sense. Let's start with the simplest. You have a ball. You might have done this exercise already, but if you're not familiar with it, the idea is that you have the ball bounce. It can be up, down, on an arc, from one thing to the next, all around the room, and that's more of an advanced version. But the point is that you have a ball bounce, and you're supposed to squash and stretch this ball at certain places to make the motion feel real. And this is the difference between what a beginner will do versus an intermediate. The beginner will squash on impact and stretch right before and after, and they do all of this without thinking. That's not bad as a beginner. That is actually practicing to get to where you need to be as an intermediate. At the intermediate level, the intermediate is going to think how fast the ball is falling, how hard it's hitting the ground, is the ball squishy or stiff, is it gaining or losing momentum, and then applies where and how much squash and stretch is used. And just to break down how the intermediate is thinking even more, if the ball is falling fast, then the intermediate is going to decide how much the ball has to stretch to convey how fast it's falling. If it's not falling that fast, then there's not going to be that much stretch. If it's falling really fast, there's going to be a lot of stretch. Just saying all of that, it makes it sound like the intermediate is doing a lot of thinking, and they are. But you don't have to pull out a calculator to calculate if a steel ball is falling from 200 feet. It is going to be moving at X speed. That sounds like a bad math class problem. And if you're creative, there's a high chance that you don't want to do too much math. So instead of thinking of it like a math problem, you actually have to be thinking of just asking better questions. That's what the intermediate is doing. They're asking how fast something is falling just to figure out how much stretch there's going to be. Is it gaining or losing momentum? That's going to affect if it's going to be stretching more or less on that bounce. And of course, what sort of material is the ball made out of? Because that's going to affect how fast it'll fall and what sort of squash and stretch is going to be applied as it falls and hits. The intermediate is doing squash and stretch so powerfully here because they are taking from our reality and then they are applying it here and then they're breaking it so that they can exaggerate it in their animation and make it feel like it was always part of our reality. All of this means is that instead of solving a math problem, they're just asking better questions and then planning their animation around the answers to those questions. The other example that I want to bring up is from The Illusion of Life. This is a book of Disney animation created by two of the original Disney animators. If you want to check it out, I have an affiliate link down in the description. But in this book, they show how squash and stretch is used on a mouse chewing a piece of cheese. There is nothing real about that. As far as I know, in this world, we do not have anthropomorphic mice that chew like humans do. But in order to make us, the audience, think that this is real, they use some human qualities and they base the chewing motion off of how humans open and close their jaws, and they exaggerated the cheeks squashing and stretching. I can talk so much more about this, but there is something else that beginner animators need to know about squash and stretch. It's possible that if you've been animating for a little bit, and squash and stretch is not working for you, you feel like you have been squashed up against a wall because there is something that is not clicking because it's making the animation look off and wrong. And it's very possible that what I'm about to say is something that you would have found out very, very soon. To show you what that subtle mistake is that you're probably making, I'm going to show you that definition from earlier. This is the definition that I showed you in the beginning. That top part is highlighted because that's what people read and remember the most. But right after that, you have the mistake people make. The object's volume must remain consistent. I like bringing attention to this because this was the most overlooked mistake that I was making in my own animation for years. And as I mentioned, it makes your animation look off. The best way to fix it is to just be conscientious of it and to keep in mind that if it is stretching, make it thinner. If it's squashing, make it fatter. And if you're doing computer animation, you can actually plug in numbers and add and subtract based on that. But animators were drawing this and doing this years before computers caught up. So if you're doing traditional animation, you don't have to worry so much about getting numbers perfect. Was that helpful? Are you now wondering if a keyframe is actually what you thought a keyframe was? If so, that's this video here.